This is the Brandon Smith Show, and I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of the show is one singular thing, and that is to help you live a life that much more free from dysfunction. And so today's show, it's been a little while, but today's show, we are going to do leadership therapy. We haven't done one of these in a little while. And to help us on this journey is my wonderful, amazing producer, Whitney Mendoza. Although I have a little bump on my chin today, and Whitney's like, what is this? What is this bump on your chin today?
No one else had to know, Brandon.
Well, yeah, but you just like, that's why you only got 2 compliments instead of 3.
Well, last time I only got 1, so.
Did you only get 1?
I did.
I think I do a pretty good job at the 2 or 3.
Okay.
Well, we are talking today about leadership therapy. And so normally when we do leadership therapy, we'll bring in a topic. We'll say, hey, today we're going to talk about courage. Or I think the last one we did was we talked about, okay, here's the ways not to quit a job. We
Correct.
talked about that. So, we'll take a topic and we'll jam on it. This particular time, we're actually going to take, because we've had so many kind of listeners write in on different challenges that they've got, that I have compiled these and not seen any of these, compiled them and handed them to Whitney. So I don't exactly know what we're in for today, but we are going to take on some of your challenges that you've written in and shared with us. So Whitney, hit me. I know you got a chance to look through. I see your paper marked up like you've selected some.
I picked some good ones. For once, I get to maybe pull a curveball over on you.
I think that's not going to be hard.
Okay.
Let's see.
There we go. Dear workplace therapist, help. Can you assist in how to refrain from becoming a bulldozer? I have so many ideas and want to get them out. Sometimes my ideas are better and I want those to be shared. When others talk and hang on. This is a poorly written sentence someone sent you.
That's your job as the reader to
I should have read this one first.
to fix that.
Okay. When others talk and slowing down, not to bulldoze over them. I think what they're trying to say is I don't want to just throw out all my ideas at once. I want to take some time and go through every idea and explore the idea, not just here are my 20 ideas. I feel like that's what they're trying to encapsulate here. What are good tactics not to be so pushy?
Yeah. Okay, this is like a normal problem. This is a normal issue. People get this. This happens. So here's a way. So context matters with this particular question. So the kind of work organization you're in makes a difference. So I like to say it this way. It makes it nice and simple. Every workplace has got a speed limit, and you got to know what the speed limit is of the organization. And so if you're in a nonprofit, the speed limit's often more like a school zone. Okay, or if you're in a really big organization, over 3 billion in revenue with a B, again, it's more like a school zone. Some exceptions to that. So you've got to kind of say, so in this case, this person might be in a nonprofit environment where this change is kind of more slower. It's more like 25 mile an hour speed limit. You might have some companies are more like 35, 40 mile an hour speed limit. You might have a startup or a smaller organization. Speed limit's like the Autobahn. I mean, you just go as fast as you want to go. So knowing the speed limit matters. And the other part to this equation is knowing what kind of car you are. Some people are like Maseratis. They just go super fast. So you're smirking.
I thought of what car it was.
Oh yeah, I knew that's what you thought. So what are you?
Well, I don't know. You came out guns blazing with Maserati. But,
you like that?
I do, but I picture myself more of a classic Mustang kind of person.
Classic Mustang. Well, that's still a pretty
Made
fast
of
car.
Steel.
That's pretty fast car. So you'd want to be in an environment, in your case, that gives you more nimbleness and flexibility, like a startup or like a small business, which you've got those 2 things.
Yeah.
So that's good. And you're smiling. So that says it's good. You can kind of go faster.
Yes.
65, 70 miles an hour, something like that. No? Classic Mustang. I think of you more like that speed.
Okay.
Maybe not quite Maserati speed. But we're moving on. So I think knowing what kind of car you are also matters too. Because if you don't like a lot of change, you like slower pace, and you want to find an environment like that. Okay, so this is the first step. The first step is fit. Understand your environment, understand what kind of car you are. Okay? So this person might just come to the realization that, gosh, this is really just not a good environment because it moves slower for me. Because it's really hard for a Maserati to drive in a school zone consistently every day.
Right.
It's very, very hard.
That's a great analogy.
It's very hard. They
Yeah.
can do it, but it's just, I mean, when I work with clients like that, honestly, they can do it for about 3 to 6 months and they're like, I can't do this anymore. I got to go faster. So environment matters. Now, the second thing is what can you do to slow your speed down, which is kind of her question. Like, how do I slow down, not be a bulldozer? So I had a client of mine once, and he had actually come in and he spoke at a panel. And it was to a bunch of students. And he told the story. He said, early in my career, I got promoted. I was like the youngest person on this leadership team, and I was pushing hard and all these ideas. Oh, we can go faster. And blah, 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 blah. And no one really liked how hard he was pushing. And one day his boss pulled him aside when they were walking out to their cars in the parking lot. And he said, you know, you really need to ask yourself, is it more important for you to be right or more important for you to be effective? And that's a really good question for people who move fast.
Nice, yeah.
Is it more important to be right or effective? And I heard hints of that in this person's comment. This person said, my ideas are right. Like, I got some right ideas. Okay, you probably do. I mean, I acknowledge, I don't know this person's ideas, but I acknowledge probably are the best ideas in the room. But what do you care more about, being right or effective? And so if it's effective, then you got to say, okay, how do things get decided around here? Like, what's the proper pace? What's the proper protocol? Can I kind of follow that in order to have my ideas make the most impact? Or, you know, is it more about being right? So I think there's that piece too. And so to do that, the last tip I would add on this one is just be curious. Ask some questions. You know, if it's a new environment for you, which my assumption is this is new for this person, ask some questions and say, how does stuff get decided around here? What's the often either timing or who do I need to get on board? Because just shouting out ideas in meetings doesn't sound like that is the best approach in that environment. So asking questions, get curious, get some people that trust this person, and then you can go a little faster. That is the good news, I will say. Once you in environments that have slower speed limits, if you can build up enough trust and credibility, people will let you change the speed limit. They'll actually let you move it from 35 to 45. Okay.
But I'm still going 65
You're
at
going,
least.
yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Well, that's about probably your max. So, somewhere around. That's still fast, though. I'm just saying. Okay, there's that question. Okay.
Are you ready for the next one?
I'm ready for the next one.
Maybe I should read this one over first. Dear workplace therapist, what to do? See? What do you do when your priorities are not the same as your supervisors, but both are good for the organization? I edited that one in my mind.
Yeah, that's a good one. So what do
I
you
know,
do?
I picked it.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
What do you do when your priorities are different than your supervisors, but both are good for the organization? Okay. So many questions I want to ask on this one. So many that I cannot because the person's not here.
And Whitney can't read.
Oh, I think you did fine. So I would say this. Something I'm a big believer in is treat your supervisor as your number one customer. Mm-hmm. So we'll make the supervisor a her in this case, just to put a pronoun. So I would want to know what her kind of goals and objectives and priorities are. And I'd want to make sure you deliver on that first and foremost. And you're regularly communicating that. Because when you make your supervisor happy and you treat them as your number one customer, they will tell other people how great you are. So they'll do some promoting on your behalf. So I would make sure you always make those first. Okay. Now, if you have the bandwidth and the time, I would still also then address your other priorities and try and get those done. And you can either do it through your supervisor by saying, oh, I also want to take on these other things. But if you feel like they're not going to buy into those, do them on the side. You know, just it's a case where if you feel like it's best for the organization, which is the comment in there, you don't necessarily have to have your supervisors buy in. When a supervisor doesn't buy into ideas that are best for the organization, there are one of two reasons why, usually. The first one is because they're afraid of the politics around that. Mm-hmm. And so there could be political reasons, or they don't understand what you're trying to do. A third might be there's not enough resources for it. But if you think you can get it done, then you can get it done.
Sure.
So if you feel like you can't get their buy-in, just go ahead and do it anyway. As long as you know it's best for the organization. It's easier to ask for forgiveness and say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I would want to find other supporters or advocates. So maybe it's not your supervisor, but your supervisor's boss. And as long as they're in the know, or you create a committee that works on that other thing. Mm-hmm. But to be, again, go back to the main point, make your supervisor's priorities first. They're your number one customer, and then put yours after that. That's the safest play in this situation.
I've seen this work too, where you were talking about like maybe going ahead and taking the step. Because I've seen this work where maybe there was like a process or a system that needed to be in place. And so we went ahead and put that system in place. And it was kind of this thing that everyone was like, where's this been all my life? This is totally fantastic. And then it's a little bit easier to get the buy-in when, it's helping others. And you're like, look, we've already proven success.
Yes. Yeah. And if it is something big or bold that you want to try and put in place and you feel like there's some resistance to that, the simplest and easiest way to sell one of those is to sell it as a pilot. Just say, hey, no big deal. We're just going to try it with these 5 people. We're just going to try it with this department over here. If it doesn't work, we'll stop. So nobody freak out. This is not like a huge organizational thing. Let's just try it with these group of people. They like it. We'll add another group of people. And people will, majority of the time, you'll get support for a pilot that you might not get support if you tried to say, let's just do the whole organization. Sure. So that's another way to kind of build on what you said. Oh, yeah, we still got... You want to open with the question before break?
We can do that.
Okay.
Let's do it. This one's a longer question.
Do you want to read it first, just quietly to yourself before you...
Probably should.
Before you read it out loud. I'm just,
I probably should. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Dear Workplace Therapist, I'm the hiring manager for a company of 50 employees. Recently, a position came open that I need to fill in our finance department. When I mentioned it to a friend of mine who works in a similar field, she said she would be interested in applying for the role. Her skill set would be a great match for what we need, but I'm concerned how this might work in our personal lives. So it goes on to say, our parents were in each other's weddings, and we have been friends practically since birth. I would be her manager if she took the job. What issues should I consider ahead of time, whether or not I hire her?
Oh, mixing friends and family. This is like a friend and family hybrid. Because they've been friends for so long, they're like family. Yeah. Friends and family at work. And it's not a family business. And you'd be their boss.
I know of frenemies, but what is that, a fam?
Well, it could be a lot of things depending on how this plays out. Okay, so let's take this on after break. So stay tuned. We're going to go to break. We come back from break. We're going to talk about how do you navigate, and should you even navigate the friends, family at work thingy. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, this is Brandon with your coaching minute for the week. So one of the tips I give my clients that have direct reports is the following tip. At some point during the year with your direct reports, often about halfway between the annual review process, so at that 6-month mark, at the end of one of your one-on-ones with one of your direct reports, ask the following question or questions. What could I start doing to support you better? What could I stop doing? And what could I continue doing? What could I start doing to support you better? What could I stop doing that's getting in your way? What could I continue doing that's working for you? And what you'll find is they'll come back with valuable feedback for you on ways you can adjust to be a better leader. But you'll also find that each direct report's going to give you a little bit slightly different feedback. It's a great way to make sure you're giving everybody what they need so you're not guessing. So pick that point in time and do it. Now, one more important hygiene tip around this. Make sure you let your direct reports know you're going to ask that question so they can prepare and be ready when it happens. So that's my coaching minute for the week. I look forward to hearing how it goes. Welcome back to the Brandon Smith Show. Of course, I'm your host, Brandon Smith. And when we went into break, we were talking about, Whitney shared a story from one of you all about kind of this challenge of, so Whitney, just to kind of summarize again, we got a hiring manager,
Yes.
50-person company. This person is going to post a job for a finance role.
Yep.
And tells their friend about it. Their friend's like, oh, I love that job. I'm qualified for that job. I want to
Yes.
apply for that job. And when the person says, he steps back and says, well, yeah, they actually are applied, but we've basically grown up together and we've known each other for a long time. And so how do I navigate this?
Yes. And she specifically asked, what happens if I hire her and what happens if I don't?
Yeah.
So something on both sides of that one.
Okay. She's got herself in an interesting position here because this is a sticky one. There is a higher probability of this going badly than going well. So if I was to say kind of the first step is I would want to know, okay, what's the process for hiring? Who makes the decision? Does the hiring manager, is she gonna, or she or he or whoever this person is, are they going to make the decision or is there a committee? And so I think that's the first one. Think about that. But the more pressing recommendation I'd have is I'd recommend that this person, so was this person a male or female? Do we know?
Looks like she said she would be interested. So it sounds like they're both female.
Okay. So I would ask her out to dinner, your friend, and just say, hey, let's talk a little about this. And I would give her kind of all the nitty gritty about the company, including company culture. So, she's actively saying, here's all the stuff that is not awesome about the situation, because no situation's perfect. Every place has got their dysfunction.
Yeah.
So be kind of open and honest about it. If the person's still interested, then I would say, okay, so if you're still interested, I want more than anything to make sure our friendship is preserved. So we need to really talk about how this is going to go. So if you're still interested, what happens if I don't pick you or we decide not to go in a different direction for whatever reason? Are you going to be okay with that? So I would create, basically, to be geeky, you want to turn all this into a process with your friend. So there's some clarity. So you can talk about expectations up front. So say, okay, so let's say we pick you or we don't pick you. Well, how do you want me to handle that to make sure our friendship is still good? And then I would go the other path. Say, let's say we pick you. How do you want that working relationship to be?
Yeah.
Because while I want to make sure we're friends and I love the fact we can be friends at work, I got to make sure that it's not viewed as favoritism at work, that we can't be going out to lunch every day, that I'm still going to give you performance reviews. We've still got to have those kind of conversations. Are you going to be okay with that? Is that going to be awkward for you? Is that going to mess up our friendship? I don't want that to happen either. So let's talk about how do we preserve that. So just having some open, honest conversations, I think, is really important. So I'll give you a great story that kind of summarizes that. I had a friend of mine, and she had started working for a company, and she was working kind of part-time as a consultant in HR. And her boss became a friend of hers, and her boss hired her. And so she worked kind of full-time. Okay. So if you're listening to this and can't see me, I've got kind of like my hands in the air. Whitney's staring at my hands because I've got one hand over the other, showing a relationship of boss over a direct report.
Okay.
So then my friend did so well at work that she got promoted to a lateral position even with her boss and her friend.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Then she got promoted again to a more senior position that was like not directly over her boss and her friend, but like over to the side, but a more senior job. Okay. And then she got moved over her boss and her friend. You follow me? So the person who hired her, she got promoted up so many times, she ended up becoming her boss's boss. Okay. Then there was some issues with profitability, and they had to do a round of layoffs, and she had to fire her boss, the person who also would become her friend.
This is intense, Brandon.
And she said when they both could see that this was the direction that the company was going in, she said, we went out to dinner and we basically had a really honest, open conversation with each other and said, if this happens, how do we preserve our friendship? And what are some things we can do to Going to make sure that that's good because I want to make sure we're good no matter what happens because that might be what I have to do. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And they came to a really good agreement and it kind of worked out well. And sure enough, she had to let her friend go. And then she was able to rehire her as a consultant and it still like works with her today.
Okay.
So it all worked out well in the
Yeah.
end. But that was the storyline. So very similar to this.
Interesting.
So I would take from her story the same recommendation I gave: have a dinner conversation, get really clear on expectations, create kind of a process, and that will ensure a healthier outcome about 80% of the time. You still run into the probability that you follow the process and the friend still gets mad. You're like, but you said that would be okay. That could still happen. That's
Yeah.
why this is really dangerous stuff. Because you're dealing with family, friends, and there's just bad boundaries. My wife and I were just talking about that this morning when we often get friends or family that will say, hey, can you help us with this? And then they don't have any sense of boundaries. So they feel like they can, say stuff to you that you'd be like, you never say that to somebody you hired.
Right.
And yet you're talking to me that way. That's weird. So you run the risk of not good boundaries when you start to mix those. So it can be done, just have to be careful.
That was good.
Okay.
It was intense. Whew.
You got another one for me?
I wasn't sure how we were going to get out of that one, but
It's a really there's more likelihood you're going to get trapped in that box than get out. But it can be done.
okay. I've got two more.
Is that the ones with the double arrows?
The double, because I already did the ones.
Okay.
How does one overcome the misconception that one must put in FaceTime? Studies show that workers allowed to work from home are more productive and that current technologies allow working relationships to still thrive. But employers adhere to the antiquated notation that your face must be seen at the office. What steps can one take to convince employers to recognize that requiring butts in seats is counterproductive?
Oh, this one sounds a little edgy. This one does sound a little edgy. Butts and seats.
Okay.
So I would say, while we're talking about, I would agree with everything that was said in that. Studies do show that people want flexibility.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine who has worked in both environments, and her personal belief is that you either can have an organizational culture that is all virtual, or you have one that's all kind of physically located. But it's very difficult to have a blend.
Both.
A blend. And so while we can say, oh yeah, all these things are great, working virtual is great, what will happen to people who are virtual is that they will get passed over for things. They won't be included in information. And they'll be kind of like thought of, and as an afterthought, is the first thing that'll happen. The second thing that'll happen is they will often not get the same kind of promotions or be seen as the same kind of impactful person that they probably are.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, we often talk about an absence of communication. People assume the worst. And that's what happens here. It's like if you're out of sight, out of mind. So you got to really make sure that you're doing a good job of that. Now, I don't believe in the organizational structure where everyone should have to come into the office every day. I don't believe in that. I don't think that makes sense. But I do believe there's value in face-to-face meetings, particularly if you're an employee working in an organization. There's value in that. You probably need to have 2 or 3 days a week that are allocated to that. So I know organizations that are trying to make this hybrid blend. What they're doing is they're picking like 1 or 2 days a week, and they're saying those are the days we're going to do all our meetings. Because virtual meetings, folks, just don't do well.
Right.
They don't work well.
Yeah.
We've all seen the funny videos where someone goes to the bathroom or their dog's barking in the background or whatever. They're not optimal and productive. So there's value in having a day or two set aside for that. But I do believe in flexibility. I think that there should be a lot of that. And so I think the way that you get, I'm not sure exactly what the question is, other than the person's kind of wants to not have to be physically located in the office every day, which I'm agreeing with the statement. If you want to try and get your employer to go to that, I think that you do it like I recommended earlier. Make it a pilot. Hey, can we try this for 3 months and just see how it goes? And if it's working for you and working for me, maybe we can keep that going, because that would mean more to me than ...
Yeah.
More to me than a big raise, more to me than a promotion, more to me than whatever it happens to be.
And I liked what you said about keeping it consistent. Like if it's every Monday we're going to have our meetings and then every Tuesday we work from home and then it's, a schedule like that, then it's predictable.
Yeah, keep it consistent. Just know what days are going to be the days where everyone has to come into the office. And now I will say this becomes more and more of an issue when you're living in a city like we live in Atlanta that's got really bad traffic issues and problems. And then you have people who have kids. They need that flexibility, and you need to offer that. And when you're in a market like we're currently in right now, where finding talented people is hard, you don't want to run the risk of losing people. So as an employer, you really need to be considering giving people flexible schedules. That said, pick your 1 or 2 days a week that you think you want people in the office and set that and say, this is going to be it. And that works really well. And I think this person would probably be more willing to compromise if it had a sense of purpose to it. What I'm reading underneath their comment is it doesn't feel purposeful. It feels like a silly, antiquated thing, like time clocks, from 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. So, yeah. So you want to try and do one more?
One more.
We'll do a quick one. I can get in and answer in like 30 seconds.
Okay, good.
I think.
I feel like this one's really relevant. There's a lot going on in the world, and this is centered around really tragedies and how we deal with those in the workplace. How does a person effectively show up at work when the tragedies in the news closely mirror personal events? Recently, I struggled to manage my own feelings as a person whose family member committed suicide and another died of alcohol abuse. How do we manage those feelings when pop cultural news hits in the workplace? So how do we manage when they hit close to home?
Yeah, I think so. Here's what not to do. Don't just bottle that in and not tell anybody. I think that's a bad idea because it's not going to go away.
Yeah.
I think it's important to share with your direct supervisor and say to her or him, hey, I want to be transparent with you and just share with you. There's been a lot kind of going on in the news with this person's death and this person's death. And I've had a lot of that in my family. And so it's affected me a little more than I thought. That said, I'm still going to be able to get the job done. I just wanted to let you know that it's affected me more than I had expected. Yeah. And so there may be some times when I may need to take a little extra break or just to be able to process this a little bit. I don't need you to do anything with it. I really mostly just wanted to give you a heads up. So I think there's two important points in how I said that. One is you're communicating it, but you're not saying it's going to impact your ability to perform. And you're also telling the person what you need from her or him. So when you share stuff like this with a boss, the first thing the boss thinks in the back of their mind, they go into kind of a risk management place. They go, oh my gosh, this person isn't going to be able to do their job. Right. And oh my gosh, now what do I need to do? Now I've got to figure out all these ways to fix this problem or accommodate for this, or I better go start looking for another person because this person's unreliable.
Right.
You don't want that to be the interpretation. So you're mostly just sharing with them what's going on, but reassure them what you can do and be able to be clear what you need from them. Most reasonable bosses who are good people, which most bosses want to be, will honor that and do good work with that. Now, if you think you're in an environment where you don't feel psychologically safe enough to be that vulnerable or that transparent, then share it with coworkers or colleagues or friends. Maybe not your boss, but find some trusted people that you can talk to. But definitely you want to share what's going on. And just a couple of conversations with that can help you feel not alone. Often those events like that make us feel isolated. We feel alone, and that's not good for us. So just knowing that there's other people out there is helpful. Okay.
Very good. Thank you, workplace therapist.
We did some good work today, Whitney.
We did.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for your help.
No problem.
That was amazing. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Wonderful. That was 3 right there.
Ending the show on a high note. Thank you.
I closed with 3.
That's good.
Great. I'm trying to keep the ratio up.
That's 1 for every week to get me through 3 weeks.
Okay. Until our next one. So thank you for watching and listening. And of course, keep up the fight every week as we try and fight workplace dysfunction and dysfunction in general. Of course, you can follow us on Facebook and you can follow us on iTunes. And if you haven't checked out the Workplace Therapist website, please do at www.theworkplacetherapist.com. One more important thing. I never ask this, so I almost feel a little bit embarrassed asking this. But for those of you who are listening on iTunes, it would be really, really awesome if you could rate the show. Give us a rating, put some comments. So many people choose their shows based on ratings and comments. And it would be great to know if you're getting value out of this, to be able to share that so more folks can listen. That would mean a lot to me. I would really appreciate that. So until our next week and next show, have a great week and an awesome life.